Hello, everyone. Welcome along to Live on Air this evening. It's my great pleasure to have Lindie Leviston with us tonight. Lindie is no mean flute player, and she's got a fantastic life and music and story to tell us. Well, so let's cut to the chase, Lindie. Tell us about your career as a flute player.
Well, I started off in junior school playing the recorder. How that came about was our primary school decided to start a recorder program, and they invited kids in the school, so it was by invitation only, to come and have recorder lessons. Unfortunately, I wasn't on the list, and I was very disappointed, but therein is the first lesson. I really wanted to learn the recorder, and so I approached them and said that I was interested and I really wanted to be doing it. And I think I was the first student that then went on to do music for high school and to become a professional musician.
So a lot of people do start out with recorder and then make a transition to flute or clarinet. Was there something in particular that drove you towards flute rather than one of the other wind instruments?
Sure. Well, actually, I wanted to do the oboe, but there was no oboe teacher at my school. And in fact, I was quite happy on the recorder. I absolutely love the recorder. I love Baroque music. I think it's
Yeah.
a fabulous launching pad for any instrument. It teaches you rhythm, it teaches you how to read music. I did that with both my children. It is a fairly easy transition from recorder to flute because much of the fingering is the same. And of course, you have to learn air control and breathing. So it's the perfect transition, actually. Of course, the embouchure is very different. So with flute, you have to learn to produce an embouchure.
You show us all about the embouchure.
So on a recorder, you have a hole, and the air stream, you put your mouth over the hole and you blow directly into that hole. So there's no gap between your lips and where the air goes in. On the flute, the difficulty is that you have to create your embouchure, and then there's a gap between your lips where the air comes out and the hole where the air comes in. So you're not blowing, if you have a look at the hole, you're not blowing into that hole. Nothing will come out. You have to blow across the hole. And the sound is created by the edge of the hole splitting the air. So some of it goes in and some of it goes out. So I'll try and show you. You're blowing across the hole rather than into the hole.
And it's that blowing across that gives the ambience of the flute sound that you only need one or two in an orchestra to get that beautiful effect floating above, don't you? It's both a delicate sound, but it's also got a kind of a sense of presence that none of the other woodwinds do. Would that be your experience?
Well, I think it's partly also due to what the instrument is made out of. For instance, the brass instrument sounds like a brass instrument because it's made out of brass. Now, originally, of course, flutes were made out of wood, but it's becoming increasingly popular now to have gold flutes. And of course, the gold is going to create a certain timbre, just like silver creates a certain timbre. And it really has to do with overtones. And when we say somebody has a beautiful tone, what we're actually meaning is that their core sound has layers of overtones on top of it, which gives it a richness. Now, a recorder sounds very different because we actually don't get those overtones on the recorder.
How long does it take to move from novice to professional player in an orchestra?
Well, I think you can become pretty proficient within 7 years from beginning to being, a fairly competent musician. Of course, it depends how much you practice. The more you practice, the faster you're going to get there.
I think that's a lovely answer. So did you practice a lot as it became your life very quickly as a teenager?
Well, that's such an interesting question because I didn't grow up in a musical family. So I was one of two kids at school who were doing music as one of their subjects. And the other girl in my class, her parents were musicians. And I used to go to her house and just hear this incredible music. Um, and I didn't have an access to a lot of printed music myself. She was a violinist, so I used to take her violin music home with me and play it on the recorder. Things change. Sometimes you can lose that joy of that pure gut joy of music, and you have to find it again. Hopefully you come out the other side. Some people don't. It's a very stressful profession, and it's very competitive. So you have to have the personality as well to be confident enough in your own playing and about yourself to want to push through.
We've got one of our live on air viewers has asked a question, and she says, do you still learn? Do you still have a teacher?
Absolutely. I believe you can never stop learning. So having a teacher keeps me motivated. It keeps me on the right track. It makes sure that I practice. And yeah, I just think there's so much knowledge out there that you can never stop learning. He's the principal flute player of the Adelaide Symphony Orchestra. He's also a soloist, just an extraordinary player, very meticulous. He doesn't, when I have lessons with him, he does not let it go until I do it correctly. And that's what I need. I go to him because I want to improve, not because I want him to tell me what I do correctly, but what I need to improve on. So moving on from that to marathon running, there is so much similarity between running marathons and playing a musical instrument and being a Christian, really. And in this photo, which was on the 29th of May this year, I ran the Mont Saint-Michel Marathon. So Mont Saint-Michel is a monastery in Normandy, and it is just exquisite. It's out in the bay, and there was only access at high tide. They've now built a causeway across, and the finish of the Mont Saint-Michel Marathon is at the Mont. That was the finish line, yes. So I'm looking probably a little bit fresher in the first photo, and I was very glad to get to this point in the marathon. There are a couple of things that I want to say about marathon running and Christian life. The Mont Saint-Michel Marathon is the only marathon in the world where you can see the finish from the start. And the day broke. It was the most perfect day for running a marathon because it was overcast, but it wasn't raining. So it was cool, but we couldn't see the Abbey from the start. And as I was running along, I thought to myself, I know the Abbey is 42.2 kilometers away. I can't see it, and I have absolute faith that it is there. And it became so clear to me that is what my Christian life, my Christian walk is like. That sometimes I can't see the finish line, but I keep going because I know that the end line is there and it's worth it. So in the first photograph, I am probably about 20 Ks into the race. I was having a very good race, and I had been training for about 8 months for this race, and I got to 21 Ks, and I'm like, I'm halfway there. I don't want this race to finish. I've been training so hard for 6 months, and it's almost over. However, at this point in the photograph, I really wanted the end to be finished. I was like, yep, I'm done. But what tends to happen, what tends to happen, and in the previous marathons that I have run, I've hit a wall, and this usually happens to athletes between the 34th and the 38th kilometer. And what happens is that your body really starts to cannibalize on itself. So all the nutrients that you've eaten the day before and the week before get used up, and you do eat a little bit on the way in terms of protein balls, but obviously nothing substantial. And at that point, your body says, stop, I can't go any further. And you suddenly feel, within a matter of seconds, you feel like your legs are filled with concrete. And the previous marathons that I've run, I've always hit a wall and I've always had to stop. And so I was reading a book and it was saying to me, what are you going to do when you hit the wall? It's not a matter of if you hit the wall, because we are going to hit the wall. So you need to get a strategy for when you hit the wall. Have something to think about that's going to take you through that time where you're struggling. And so I thought, what can that be that can help me just to get over that 5 minutes, which it really is only 5 minutes, and your body kind of kicks back in again, that can help me through that time. And so I decided to focus on the crucifixion. And I thought of the pain that Jesus experienced, and how my marathon running was voluntary, and how Jesus took that pain on himself on behalf of us all. And I was able to really focus on that for those 5 minutes. And it gave me a better idea of the kind of pain that Jesus must have experienced on the cross. And
parallel between running a marathon, we've just heard you talk about Christian life. What about, how do you see this as working within your life and music?
Well, I see it working in all, well, I guess I've got three main areas of my life. That's being a Christian, being a musician, and being an athlete. So this is, he's fondly known as Wib, but his name is William Bennett, and he is probably, well, he's up there with 2 or 3 of the most well-known flute players and teachers. He has produced some spectacular students, and growing up, we just listened to so much of we listened to many recitals. Of course, growing up in South Africa, we didn't have access to a lot of musicians, and it was all record players. And in fact, a lot of musicians boycotted South Africa because of apartheid. So, and it was, of course, before the days of YouTube. So we had long playing records, and I have spent many hours listening to Sir William Bennett playing the flute and trying to imitate him. And
so how come you're seated next to him here?
Well, my husband studied with him, and he also brought him out to Australia on 2 or 3 occasions, and we've stayed with my husband. And so this is in London about 3 weeks ago. Wib has just turned 80, and there were celebrations around the world to celebrate him as a flute player. So it was a great honor to be able to go to those celebrations. In this particular photo, I've got David, my husband, on Skype, and he is wishing Wib a very happy 80th birthday.
And you played for Sir William along with a number of other players in honor of the birthday.
Yes, so I have a very good friend who is, we have a duo, and we went to Singapore to take part in the Singapore celebrations. And so we played a piece of music called Ecstatic Dances, which is written by an Australian composer called Ross Edwards, and it is written for my teacher, Geoffrey Collins. And the music is so Australian in that he tries to imitate landscapes and especially insect sounds. And so it was lovely. Geoffrey Collins, who the piece is written for, was also a student of Wib. So it was lovely to be able to go to Singapore and to play for Wib, because unfortunately Geoffrey Collins wasn't able to go. Well, this is Sir James Galway, who again was just a childhood idol, really. I listened to so much of his music, as so many of us did. He's got such a distinctive sound. Really, you just have to listen to 3 or 4 seconds of a recording and to be able to identify that it's Sir Galway. And he came to Sydney, and we had the opportunity to spend about 10 days with him, showing him around Sydney and just bringing him into our home. And it was a highlight for me. I remember as a small child, as a teenager actually, my mum buying a record of Sir James playing the Mozart flute concerto. And my mum went out, and I knew the record was in her cupboard in the bedroom. And I snuck in and got the record out of her cupboard and started playing it, whenever I got the opportunity, I just couldn't wait for my birthday. And then I heard her coming up the driveway, and I whipped the record off the record player, and in the process scratched it. I listened to it over and over again with it going. He was in Australia and he was in our lounge. I went into the bedroom and I phoned my mum and I said, "Mum, you won't believe who's in my lounge." And it really was a highlight for me because it was wonderful to get to know him as a person. I know him so well as a player, and a real privilege to be able to spend time with him and to get to know him more as a person. He's got an exceptional brain. And
overall, you've told us a lot about different highlights, etc., but there's something special, one special highlight for you about music, and I'd love you to be able to share this insight.
Sure. So, I've always loved the flute. I've loved performing. It's taken me to all over the world, really. I've met some incredible musicians. I've built some lovely friendships with other musicians. But the highlight for me is being able to pass it on to the next generation. And I always wanted to give my children, I have 2 girls, and I wanted to give them a music education. I never pushed them in the way of music, but I felt that they could certainly benefit by being disciplined, and that the discipline required from practicing and playing an instrument, they would be able to transpose into anything else in their life. So they had music lessons right through their school years. And then my oldest daughter, Emily, has gone on to study music education, and she's just graduated and is going to do some postgraduate studies. So she's going to be a music teacher. She studied piano and French horn. And then my younger daughter is in her 2nd year at the Sydney Conservatorium of Music, and she's doing oboe, which of course is what I wanted to do. But it's wonderful as a mother to be able to support her in what can sometimes be a very stressful career. And having gone through a lot of those experiences, I can be there and walk that journey with her. So I feel confident that the future of music is in good hands. And it is such a joy for me to be able to see them enjoying music and being involved with music as I was.